Do you know how to fix a broken pumpkin? You turn it into pumpkin pie. There, done. Delicious. End of story. With a pumpkin.
Hello, Miss Ottesen. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
It's Canadian Thanksgiving today, so I just finished some pumpkin pie.
Oh, are you in a food coma yet?
Kinda. Yeah, I only had 2 dinners this weekend, but it was pretty good.
Only 2, huh?
Yeah.
Slacking.
I can't eat as much as I could in my younger days, but
Oh, I understand that wholeheartedly.
I appreciate you speaking with me. Your TikToks are hilarious.
Thank you.
Very creative. Are you in the part of Texas that it has to deal with the hurricanes?
No, thankfully I am a lot further north. I'm closer to Oklahoma. So we're fairly safe up here.
You've been all over the place.
Yeah. I lived overseas for a few years.
Yeah, you lived in China. How was that experience?
Honestly, it was one of the better experiences in my life. Just to give you a different perspective of how different people live and stuff, and it's eye-opening to be exposed to cultures that are different from your own.
Are you fluent?
I'm conversational. I cannot read or write for anything. I swear Chinese is like 3 languages in one, so I can understand a fair amount, especially if they talk slower.
I have a good friend who is an amazing painter, and he lives in Hong Kong. He's lived there for 10 years.
That's awesome. Is he still living there right now?
Yes, he's there with his wife.
How's he doing? I know it's been a little nuts over there.
He's okay. He doesn't appear to be in any danger, or from what he posts. He's the kind of person that would stand out, though. Because not only is he a different color and probably looks a lot different than everybody else, but he's sort of a troublemaker as well.
Awesome.
When you got back home, you went to the Brigham Young University?
I did. Mm-hmm.
From what I understand about BYU is it's an interesting culture there. It's kind of on the stricter side. How was your experience?
Well, it is a Christian school, so they are fairly conservative and a little bit more strict. But if you follow the rules and the guidelines the best of your ability, you have a pretty good time. I loved it there, and I made a lot of really great friends. Of course, I was on the more liberal side of campus in the arts department. So I was around a lot more open-minded people. It's where I met my husband, and I have nothing but fond memories at BYU.
There's another TikToker, I think he took his channel down, but he was a gay man from England who was studying at BYU, and so his TikToks were about like his experience there and what he was going through.
Since I'm not of that community, I don't feel like I can properly give a better perspective. I just know it was a more difficult climate environment. I would do my best to lend a listening ear and to basically just be a comfort and a support. The college itself wasn't as supportive, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. What was one of the rules that kind of seemed to you, it was just like, okay, come on, this is ridiculous?
I think, okay, if we're going to make it a little bit more lighthearted, the most ridiculous rule was men weren't allowed to have beards.
Really?
Yeah. That, I think, is the dumbest thing. I mean, the rule came about in like the 70s, and I think they started the rule because of the hippie movement. I don't know exactly the history behind it, but it was just super dumb. And like, you couldn't take tests if you had any amount of scruff. And I had friends who had 5 o'clock shadow like 5 minutes after shaving. So it was just, yeah, that was the dumbest thing.
Sounds like it.
I'm like, what is so wrong about a beard? I don't get it.
Yeah. It's quite funny because Brigham Young had like a huge Santa Claus beard.
Oh, so yeah. It's I mean, you look in anywhere, just about any religious culture, there's some things that you're like, this is really stupid. So
were you one of those people that started TikTok because of quarantine?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. My sister, she doesn't create content, but she's on TikTok for entertainment, and she would share TikToks with me constantly. And so I was like, okay, I might as well download the app so I don't have to keep opening my Chrome to view all these TikToks. At the time, there was a casting director in this group who was saying that they weren't watching any of our monologue challenges that we would post on Facebook because he was on TikTok, and he's like, I'm casting people off TikTok. I was like, you know what, why don't I just look into TikTok? It could be a really great opportunity for me in the industry to at least get out there and to create something. And initially I thought it was just lip syncs and dances. I was like, I can't dance for crap, so let's just do some lip syncs. And I stuck with comedy because I never considered myself particularly great at comedy, and I wanted to get better at it. So that's kind of how it all started.
The content of them, the puns and the jokes, is that something that you sort of developed appreciation for when you started on TikTok, or is it something that you've always had?
So my For You page is mostly artists and people who draw and paint, which is really cool. But with the puns and stuff, I wanted to do more original content. And I know puns aren't necessarily original, but I got a little bored of doing lip syncs and doing other people's stuff. So I was like, what's something, again, second guessing my comedy. I was like, what's something that I could do sticking within the comedy vein? I was like, puns. Puns are fairly easy, and I can figure out how to kind of tweak them to make them my own. And that's how the pun thing started. And I thought it was just going to be a series, and I guess it kind of stuck, and now I'm known as the Pun Lady. So
When did the small hands come into play? I only know of maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people that use them, you and Call Me Chris. But how did that start getting put into the fold?
So there was a TikTok that I made where it was an original thing where I downloaded people who did like their videos of original content of tiny hands people and facial expression people. And the TikTok was about finding a niche, because I didn't really feel like I had something particular, like a thing that I would do. And someone commented, I think their handle is Gendroku. It's like, you should totally get tiny hands. I was like, all right, might as well buy tiny hands. And I figured since I bought them, I might as well use them. And I've been using them for the pun character since then.
Up here we call them freezies. I don't know if you call them something else down in Texas, but when did the eating of the freezies come into play?
So it was the very first pun video. We call them Otter Pops down here.
Otter Pops, okay.
I was just eating one, and I was like, I might as well make a TikTok. And since I didn't want to put it down, I was just eating it in the TikTok. And then I guess the pattern just formed, because there were a lot of comments just saying how much they liked the added element, I guess, of me eating something. So I was like, all right, I have a whole bunch of them. It's this middle of summer, and it's super hot, and I like them. So I just kept doing it, and now that's just like with the tiny hands, that's just part of the pun character, as well as the hoodie.
And people are like sending you Otter Pops in the mail, right?
Yes, my freezer is very full.
It's a little perk.
It's very nice.
Do you remember what flavor that first one was?
Knowing me, it was either an orange one or a red one. So either orange or cherry. Those are the ones that I like. I give my kids the other ones.
Yeah, orange is my fave. I also like the white cream soda one.
Oh, I haven't had the cream soda one. They have a pina colada one that's kind of the white flavor.
You've been acting for a number of years. You got a BFA at Brigham Young University. Tell me how it was like for you getting into the industry, into the art.
So I started doing theater in middle school, and I really liked it. But the high school that I went to didn't have a theater program until I moved halfway to a second high school. I always had considered it as more like a hobby. In college, I was actually pursuing a pre-med degree, thinking that I was going to be like a doctor or a physical therapist or something, because I always liked the idea of helping people and just being there for people. But it never sat right with me. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll just minor in theater or something, because I enjoyed it so much. And I was just having a much better time in my theater classes than in my pre-med classes, even though anatomy was super interesting to me. But the feeling came that I needed to switch my major. And of course, I argued with myself because I let my practical side kind of take over, and they're like, it's like, you'll never make it. There's so many people in this industry. There's so many people who are better looking, better situated than you. Why would you do this to yourself? And so I fought against that for about a year and eventually changed my major, which pushed my graduation back a little bit further. So I was in college for about 4.5 years rather than 4 years. It wasn't easy, but I definitely am a lot happier because of it. So after I graduated from BYU, we moved to Atlanta, but only for a few months. While in Atlanta, I made a lot of industry connections, even though it wasn't a long time we were there, because Atlanta is a really great spot for actors, and it's a lot more affordable. And I did some background work because, I mean, it takes a while to kind of establish yourself and get an agent. So since we were only there for about 4 months, I was like, I might as well do something. And then we moved here to Texas. I've been in smaller markets for the majority of my acting career thus far, which is difficult because a lot of the bigger jobs, the more prestigious, well-paying ones are in LA, New York, Chicago, and Atlanta. And since we're in Texas, it's very commercial, so I've focused a lot on doing commercial work whilst raising my kids. So it's been a little bit of a slow roll for me because I'm balancing being a mom and I'm in a smaller market, but we're actually moving at the end of this month to New York, so the plan is to continue my career there.
It seems to be sort of the same old story, especially like up here in Canada for entertainment or music or acting. You have to go to basically our major cities: Toronto, Montreal, Halifax, Vancouver. Alberta's really big for filming.
A lot of my favorite shows are filmed in Vancouver, like Suits, and it's really pretty up there.
Yes, very much so. And a lot of people that I see on the Canadian TikTok community, a lot of them are from Alberta, from Calgary mostly, which is kind of interesting. You have been in a number of roles, some of the more recent ones. Tell me about what your experience was being the lead in Two Sisters.
Two Sisters. So that one was just a short comedy film where I got to play a Western villain, and it's actually on YouTube as Two Sisters, and I think there's a link to it from my website. At least there should be. I might need to update it if it's not. Basically, a friend of mine wrote it, and it's about these two guys who are writing a script, and they're going back and forth on how these two sisters should interact with each other. So it cuts back and forth. The first bit of it, it's like I'm wearing all black and my sister's wearing all white, and then they cut away from it. They're like, that's too on the nose, she's the villain. And it was just fun. And then we used squirt guns for guns, and they're like, why are you using squirt guns? He's like, I hate violence. Like, no, you need to make it realistic. So it's just a satire, little comedy thing where I enjoyed using my southern accent and just hanging out with my friends. Yeah, that was actually back when I was still in college.
Yeah, I noticed that you play around with a number of accents and that you have some voiceover history as well. How many accents can you do, and what's the process in fine-tuning them?
Good question. I know how to do Texas Southern, an Appalachian Southern. They're actually quite different. And as well as a Georgia Southern, like a Georgia old-timey Southern accent. The industry calls it Brooklyn, but it's basically the Bostonian accent. And all over Europe. So I got French, German, Scottish, Irish, Cockney, the received pronunciation of British. They actually don't speak that anymore. It's like the hoity-toity, old-timey British, English, and Russian. I'm trying to figure out Australian, but man, that's hard. It's all about placement, mouth placement. There's actually a textbook that I have that breaks down dialects into phonetics. So they use the International Phonetic Alphabet so that you can get the changes, the English changes, the sounds, without having to fully listen and mimic. So you sound a little bit more real, if that makes sense. Because a lot of people, they'll try to listen and mimic, and I think it does a pretty good job, especially if you don't know how to use IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet. But in my opinion, going a step further and being able to write it out and to see what the sounds are and where the placement is in your mouth helps you sound a little bit more natural.
One thing I noticed, there was a series that you've been doing lately. A couple weeks ago, I noticed a bunch of them where you are relaying advice that your character's dad would give to her. And I noticed that in a couple of them, you're eating an apple. I've always wondered this, is that accent technique?
So I think eating really helps like ground you in a character. It's an improv technique. It helps you feel a little bit more natural because you can't really fake eating, you know? I mean, you can, but if you're actually eating something, it helps connect you to your body a little bit more. I think that day I was just hungry. So I'd like to say that I'm planned and polished with my choices, but oftentimes it's just I want to eat an apple and I have a quiet moment where my toddlers are either taking a nap or they're watching a show and I don't have any background noise. So I was like, I can film a TikTok. So it's like, I guess I'm eating an apple and I don't want to put it down.
Much like the Freezy.
Yeah. Yes, exactly like that.
One of the more recent leads that you have done, Love Not Lost.
Yeah, that one so far has been my most well-received role. It went through a couple festivals in LA, and I won actually Best Actress awards in a couple of festival competitions. And they're my first awards for Best Actress. Again, it was one of my friends who wrote it that I met in an acting class, because even though I have a BFA in acting, I still like to take acting classes because I never feel like I'm done, if that makes sense. Because I'm always changing as a person, I'm always discovering new things. So I feel like if I'm constantly training, I am able to hone the new parts of myself that come from gracefully aging, hopefully gracefully aging. But in that role, I played a nurse in a mental hospital, and my husband was having an affair, and the other lead opposite me, he is a patient of mine suffering from mental disability, and he loses his brother, and people have a hard time understanding him because he's different. And the story is about how the two of us connect through our pain, but are able to find love amidst what seems to be the darkest moments of our lives. It's a huge drama. I get hired a lot to cry. They ask me to cry a lot.
Do you find that it's easier for you to cry?
I think so, just because I'm a very emotional person. Like my reaction to most intense emotions, tears come. So when I'm like really happy, I'm crying. When I'm really sad, I'm crying. When I'm really frustrated, I'm crying. Like, I just cry about everything.
Obviously, the huge elephant in the room, the shutdown and the quarantine and COVID-19 really put a wrench in everything. Were you filming anything at the time that happened? And if so, how was that experience for you?
Yes, I was actually coming off of a career high. So we had thankfully finished A Love Not Lost right before quarantine, so that was good. But I was also a lead in another short film called Slasher, which is a horror short film, and an untitled short film where I was a victim of an abusive marriage, and also a play. So I was in quite a few things and pretty excited, and things were rolling, and then COVID happened and shut everything down, obviously. And so Slasher has been turned into an animated film, so I have my voiceover credits for that now instead of a live action. And thankfully for the untitled film, they had filmed all of my parts that they needed. So it's just all in editing now. And I had to drop the play because it kept getting pushed back, and now it's not going to open until next week. And since I'm moving in 2 more weeks, I won't be able to do it anymore. So that was a bummer. I've been fortunate that the stuff that I was in, they got majority of what they needed from me, or they adjusted things, because the industry is pretty flexible. Instead of doing live in-person auditions, everything is on tape now, which is an adjustment. A lot of people like being in the room, but I know quite a few people who are still filming through like Zoom and making scenes and still creating. You just make an adjustment when life throws a wrench in your direction.
I had noticed that in the middle of COVID, or past halfway of the length of time it has been, you were in a commercial. Was that something that you filmed in COVID, or was that before?
So I actually had 2 commercials during COVID, the quarantine, and they adjusted production. Usually they're these really big sets and they have a makeup artist and a costume person and everything. And the changes were I had to do my own makeup, I had to bring my own wardrobe, so that they can limit the amount of people that they needed on set to just camera guy, sound guy, and the director, basically. They just really cut out a lot of people in order to make these things happen, and everybody has to wear masks unless we're performing, and then when we're not performing, you put your mask back on and you disinfect, and you sign waivers saying you know that you're in like a risky situation and you're not going to get mad at anybody if you get COVID, you know. It's been weird and an adjustment, but I'm grateful to have had the work despite the lack of productions that are happening.
It's like we need to keep things going, and
Right.
so if you can do it and keep people safe at the same time, then that's great. Like up here, I guess there's a bunch of people around the province, Ontario, that just haven't seemed to gotten the message about social distancing. And but what happens is the restrictions that are put back in place are for the whole province.
One person ruining it for everybody
Exactly.
else. We've got a lot of stubborn people here in Texas too that are like, I don't need to wear a mask. Things are dying down, and then we have spikes in COVID cases, and you're like, come on, guys.
Yeah, in the city that I live in, the group of people that were increasing the numbers were university students.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have a pretty big university, the University of Western Ontario, in our city, and we also have Fanshawe College, so you have college kids and university kids just downtown in big groups, no masks. And I think the first weekend of when school got back in, Frosh Week, there was like 29 new cases.
Oh, wow.
So
College kids are poor, so maybe they'll listen.
That's exactly the point. It was a real pleasure talking to you, Ashley. Like I said, I love your TikToks. They're hilarious.
Thank you.
And if people want to check you out, check your work out, it's ashleyOttesen.com. It's Ottesen. Instagram is Ashley Ottesen Actress, and your TikTok is Ashley Ottesen.
Try to keep it pretty across the board, same thing.
Yeah, with me too. Like, I think every single one of my socials is Scott Loves Puns.
I love that handle.
Pleasure talking to you, Ashley. You have a good rest of your night.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
You can check me out on Instagram and TikTok at Scott_loves_puns. Puns is with a Z. You can find me on YouTube by searching Scott Loves Puns _ASMR. You can check out my audiobook and my new comedy EP, Okayest Hits, which both are on sale for only $2 and $1 at swaudio.bandcamp.com. Thanks for tuning in, and have a good night.